Hey everybody, it's Double RPG here, and it's March 14th, 2018, which means that today is Pi Day. But realistically, today is another episode of Double RPG Side Quests. Go eat some pie, would you? Today is a big day for Final Fantasy games as well as fighting games in general, because we have an update on two characters who are coming to two fighting games, one that is Final Fantasy related and one where a Final Fantasy character makes his debut as a guest character. And of course I'm talking about Dissidia Final Fantasy NT, which is the PlayStation 4 Dissidia Final Fantasy game, and Dissidia Final Fantasy in the arcade, which they both update at the same time. And the other is for Tekken 7. Now, of course, for Tekken 7, we all know that Noctis Lucis Caelum is going to be the third guest character who appears in that fighting game, which has been out for almost a year, around 9 months if I had to guess, or close to 9 months. But yes, that is what's going on with Tekken 7, but we did get an official release date for Noctis, who is coming to Tekken 7. But the other update for Dissidia Final Fantasy NT is that they unveiled, Square Enix unveiled, as well as Team Ninja and Koei Tecmo unveiled their first DLC character for this year, and that is the main antagonist of Final Fantasy XII, Vayne Carutta Solidor. Yeah, you would have never guessed that that antagonist from Final Fantasy XII would actually make his way into a Dissidia game. A lot of people were thinking that it was going to be Gabranth, who was coming back from Dissidia Final Fantasy and Dissidia Duodecim Final Fantasy into Dissidia Final Fantasy NT, but nope, it's the antagonist from Final Fantasy XII, so it actually brings full closure on the protagonist and antagonist side for Final Fantasy XII within that game alone. But anyway, let me go ahead and read you the update on the news article. And this news article and the other that's based on Noctis for Tekken 7 are a couple of articles that I actually got from Gematsu this time around, so let's go ahead and read them off. Vayne Carutta Solidor from Final Fantasy XII will join Dissidia Final Fantasy NT as a downloadable add-on character at the end of April, Square Enix announced. The arcade version of Dissidia Final Fantasy will add the new character first on March 14th. Wow. So looks like the arcade's getting him first, but for consoles, we have to wait just a tad bit longer. Very disappointing, but, you know, it's good to know that he is coming. And Square Enix also gave a press release based on Vayne's involvement in Dissidia Final Fantasy NT, and this is what they said. Vayne Solidor, the charismatic antagonist of Final Fantasy XII, will add brand new combat dynamics to the game using his unique playstyle. Vayne is a powerful vanguard who excels at unleashing devastating combos that overwhelm his foes, while also supporting his fellow comrades by boosting nearby allies with his unique X-skill, Rite of Conquest. In the name of House Solidor, Vayne will stop at nothing to overcome the odds and destroy all enemies in his path. So yeah, if you took a look at the trailer for Dissidia Final Fantasy NT where it shows Vayne and his gameplay, you can actually see that he does look like a very strong Vanguard type of character. And his gameplay style reminds me that of Cloud from Final Fantasy VII with brute strength in his attacks, as well as having the ability to have multiple swords come around him, kind of like Noctis from Final Fantasy 15, which you actually see Noctis do the same thing when he gets gravely hurt in Dissidia Final Fantasy NT, which I have experienced, since I am working on a review of that game, by the way. And also, his EX skill, I think, is Rite of Conquest. I think that will also transform him into his final form for the final boss form from Final Fantasy XII for the character, but it doesn't give off the full aesthetics or the full physical description of his final form, as it's just mainly his base form as what he looks like throughout most of Final Fantasy XII. But if he were to add those, details from his final boss form into this form, so that's what's all going on there for Vayne Solidor. I really am, like I said, I'm really looking forward to trying him out. I know a lot of people were either for or against Vayne Solidor as a character, or at least for Final Fantasy XII or against Final Fantasy XII. I can definitely see why it was such a divisive experience because of the different gameplay mechanics that Square Enix was going for this time around when compared to past Final Fantasy games, and others liked it because it takes place in the world of Ivalice, which is a prominent world within the Final Fantasy mythos, and it manages to fit well within the Final Fantasy mythos all on its own. And it does maintain all those elements of what you would expect to see in a Final Fantasy game in that traditional format. But the game, it tended to go for more of a massive multiplayer online type of structure, even though it was still single player only. But it just went for what Final Fantasy XI tried to do with that structure, but just take away all the multiplayer online elements and just added this, or just kept intact the single player element alone. But yeah, like I said, I can definitely see where people had their grievances with it, but for me personally, I really like it. So, I mean, it definitely retraces back to Final Fantasy's true form, aside from the games that challenges and breaks away from those conventions like Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy XIII, and of course Final Fantasy XV in that regard. And speaking of Final Fantasy XV, let's go ahead and talk about Noctis's involvement in Tekken 7. Now, let me go ahead and read the article based on Noctis alone for Tekken 7. And this one, as I said, I also got from Gematsu. Tekken 7 will add Noctis Lucis Kylum from Final Fantasy XV as a playable character via paid downloadable content on March 20th, Bandai Namco announced. So 1 week away, March 20th, 1 week away, we will actually get to play as Noctis Lucis Kylum for the first time in Tekken 7. And that's coming up pretty quickly, seeing as how Van has already released it now in Japanese arcades for Dissidia Final Fantasy Arcade. And also, here's an overview in a press release of what Bandai Namco Games had to announce for Noctis's involvement in Tekken 7, or the Noctis Lucis Kylum pack for Tekken 7. In Tekken 7 DLC 3 Noctis Lucis Kylum pack, players will be able to experience a new level of combat as they warp around the enemy while invoking Armiger, the Power of Kings. This pack includes Noctis Lucis Kylum as a playable character, the exclusive stage Hammerhead, which is the starting pit stop from Final Fantasy XV, if you remember, that has Cindy, who is supposed to be Cid's granddaughter. Yeah, that's where you actually see, that's the stage where you're actually going to see within Tekken 7 takes place. As well as the BGM Stand Your Ground Final Fantasy XV, and I think this is the original version of that song, but also the BGM Apocalypsis Noctis remix, which is the remix for Tekken 7, and 5 Noctis costumes, where some of them are ones that are based on casual attire, where a couple of them are based on his royal raiments, as well as his kingly raiments that you actually see at the end of Final Fantasy XV in terms of its story mode. But anyway, Noctis Lucis Kylum is also playable in DLC 1's Ultimate Tekken Bowl. So yeah, there you go. So Noctis Lucis Kylum is coming on March 20th, and that comes out on my dad's birthday, believe it or not. But let me tell you what I think about Noctis Lucis Kylum in Tekken 7. Just looking at his gameplay alone, and from that reveal from that fighting game tournament we got those months ago, yeah, it definitely looks like Noctis is going to be a broken character because of him warping around, not only towards his enemies, but I think he can warp to other places within the stages to get away from his enemies from like any powerful strikes. Like if people used like Akuma from Street Fighter to use his Raging Demon final attack against, or ultimate attack against Noctis, then I'm pretty sure that Noctis can use his blade to warp back, so that way he can evade Akuma's Raging Demon. And yeah, you can get what I'm saying, but hopefully that's not the case, because if it is the case where Noctis can use the warp ability to warp around different parts of the battlefields that he's playing in, or the fighting fields that he's playing in, then he is definitely going to be a broken character to who can just get around like that. But taking a look at his combat and him using the different weapons that he has available, you can actually see he does bust out some pretty smart, very brutal, and very just fast-paced and tactical combos, that which you can see from, like I said, the weapons that he has on him, and also just the different, just like the agility and just the fast-paced action he has. It does give a new meaning to Tekken 7's combat. Now, personally, I do like Tekken 7, but if there's one thing I had to complain about, it's its story mode, as well as the arcade mode for the individual characters, where they only have one fight per character, which I really hoped that they kept the tradition of having for their story mode to have a straight-on arcade mode where you had like 8 battles, and then you had a prologue at the end for that character, but unfortunately they didn't do that. And now, I haven't tried out Geese Howard yet from Fatal Fury in Tekken 7, since he was the second guest character to be introduced back last year. But I will pick him up soon enough, but when it comes to Noctis, I'm definitely going to pick him up when he comes out this Tuesday. But hopefully you do too. I mean, if you like Final Fantasy 15, and if you really like fighting games, then hopefully you'll like Noctis's involvement in this game as well. Now, I know a lot of people were for Noctis appearing in Tekken 7, as well as there were those who were against it because they were hoping that someone like Kazuma Kiryu from Yakuza by Sega would appear in this game because, well, he does look like he fits the bill for what you would expect him to see if he were to appear in Virtua Fighter, and a lot of people were possibly hoping that Virtua Fighter would actually make a comeback in Tekken 7, just like how a Fatal Fury character made his way into Tekken 7, and that's an SNK game. Now, I assume we probably will get Kazuma Kiryu at some point, but since I'm a Final Fantasy fan, not a hardcore one, but, just, a fan in general, I really do dig Noctis being a playable character. And, a lot of people say, too, that they wish him for the upcoming Soul Calibur 6, and I really think that is possible, but instead of having him in his, what he normally looked like in his young, casual self in Final Fantasy 15, how about have him appearing as his kingly self at the end of Final Fantasy 15 with his royal raiments, or his kingly raiments that he's wearing. And that would actually make sense since it would fit the theme of how Soul Calibur has always been more of this fantasy-based or fantasy-themed weapon-based fighting game series. So if they did that, then I'm definitely all up for that, but if they don't, then what can you do about it? Shadow Wolf Rising, from the video where I posted about Valkyrie Profile coming to smartphones, this is what he had to say. On the smartphone, Square, why do you taunt us? Man, I miss when Tri-Ace wasn't eaten by Square. I hope if they make another Star Ocean, they reboot the series like they said they wanted to. And yeah, I definitely agree with you with what you think about Valkyrie Profile coming to smartphones as well as Star Ocean possibly getting rebooted, because just based on where Star Ocean is going alone, yeah, it definitely does look like it needs a reboot, seeing as how Integrity and Faithlessness failed to live up to fans and critics and people's expectations, and as well as, and seeing as Valkyrie Profile, we still haven't heard anything about a fourth game, even though there is technically a fourth game that's out on smartphones right now, but for one that's appearing on console or handheld, we still haven't even heard anything whether or not if that series is coming back. So I definitely see where you're coming from in terms of your skepticism when it comes to Valkyrie Profile Lilith coming to smartphones. So yeah, that's that. This is also what Mike Donahue, who posted in the Final Fantasy VII Remake job listing and progress update, had to say. He said, so PS5 exclusive for Episode 1 and Royal Edition for PS6. And yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from right there, because of course with Final Fantasy 15 there was an original version which a lot of people thought that was an unfinished game, myself included, but then comes the Royal Edition, which still is not the full package. So if they wanted to go buy a Royal Edition for PS6 for Final Fantasy VII Remake, where if it's just the whole game or whether or not they have the multiple part episodes into one package, then yeah, that's probably what's going to happen if Square wanted to re-release that game on the PlayStation 6 within the next, I don't know, maybe 6 or 10 years from now, but who knows. But anyway, guys, that's all I have to say about this episode of Double RPG's Side Quest. So if you like what you see, be sure to rate this video as well as leaving your feedback down in the comments. Also, speaking of comments, be sure to leave your comments down in the comment section below so that way I can answer them in the next episode. And whatever questions or whatever comments that you leave, I will definitely try to give you highlight, as well as leaving your channel in the description of the next video. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button underneath my video, or underneath this video, as more support from you guys will mean that more content is coming from me in the future that you're not going to find anywhere else. So, until next time, guys, this is Double RPG signing off by saying Godspeed and Game On, gamers. Peace out!